Lora Arbrador. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. I appreciate you being willing to come on and share your story. Let me give the audience a brief introduction for you so they get a feel for who you are and what you have done over the course of years. You are a master of egg tempera, discovering the complex technique at the age of 19. You fully embraced egg tempera as your signature medium of artistry. You also co-founded the Society of Tempera Painters in 1997 and teaching historical representations where, like, what is egg tempera and which came first, a taste of egg tempera history. You are a nurse and an artist with a unique perspective, meaning that you have balanced a parallel career as a registered nurse and you've channeled artistic themes of surgery, death, illness, and intimacy into deeply emotional series like Ways of Dying, a chronicle of the AIDS epidemic, including your award-winning painting, Don't Go, My Friend, The Death of John Walsh, MD, your award-winning exhibitor, uh, first place winner in the 1997 Art and Healing exhibit at Art West Gallery in Wyoming, and earlier in 1992, and a Triptych Arts Expo in San Francisco. You're a speaker and educator at prestigious venues, invited to lecture on egg tempera at Cornell University's Johnson Museum in 1995, and you have talks and workshops introduced many to share this rare medium. You're also an author, and your book, Art and Love, was just selected as editor's pick at Book Life Reviews by Publishers Weekly. That is quite an extensive career. So I usually only have one scripted question, and that's always the first one.
Mm.
And it is, where were you born, and what was life like as a kid for Lora?
Okay, well, I was born actually in Manhattan, in New York City,
All right.
but at the age of 6 weeks, my parents moved to the Bronx, which is right on the border of Yonkers. So it's not rural, but it's got a lot of trees and plants. And I think I had, I don't know if I would call it idyllic, but when I look back at what kids are going through now, and I think I did have parents who loved me, even though sometimes it seemed like they were trying to mold me in a certain way, and so I had some struggles with that. And I talk about it in my book that I don't think that I was recognized. I don't think that I still don't think I have a lot of talent, but my parents certainly didn't think I had talent. So it was a struggle. When you talk about your podcast is called Artist Recovery, I think that could sum up a lot of my life story is just recovering from wanting to be an artist and not getting the support. But I really don't blame my parents because I don't think I showed much talent and I still struggle with that aspect. I have to work really hard.
I can imagine. I think many artists still struggle with their abilities and um, what they view their art as versus what the world views their art as. So I
Hmm.
think that's definitely something that plays out through the minds and careers of artists in general. Any creative, honestly.
Hmm.
Um, Going to school as a kid, were you one that was willing and ready to engage with other students, or were you one that was kind of off to the corner, just wanting to observe and not really be seen?
I think I was shy and I'm still an introvert, but I did have some friends So I wasn't really all by myself. I think I did. I can even think of their names, the friends that I had, girls and boys, but mostly girls. So yeah, I think I did engage with my peers.
Okay. Okay. Um, what type of work did your parents do when you were young?
Ah, okay. My father was a teacher, high school teacher of chemistry and physics, mainly physics.
Okay.
And my mother was a stay-at-home mother until I was in middle school, but she was extremely talented in a lot of fields. In art, she made all her own jewelry. She made all her own clothing, and she turned out to be a poet. She liked to create limericks. She even won a couple of limerick contests. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, so she was not an introvert.
Okay.
She was out there and very creative. My dad
Yeah.
was a photographer, so he was creative too, but mostly more of the brainy type.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, that gets us off on a very interesting start with the both perspectives of what your parents were doing and what they did, and I can see that there's that trickle down effect of that creativity into what you've been doing.
Mm. Yes, and I'm grateful to them that they saw the value in that. They never wanted me to make it a career, but they encouraged music and art and literature. So I looking back, I am grateful because I see not all kids got that.
Right, for sure. Did you know your grandparents when you were young?
Yes, I did. I was very lucky. I knew all four of my grandparents,
Okay.
and my two grandfathers died when I was young, especially my mother's father,
Okay.
Moisha. He died when I was 5, but I still remember him sitting on the sofa, very, very quiet man, and
Yeah.
stories about him. My mother said that he had a stroke, and the day before he died, he was fixing his own heating pad.
Oh wow.
And yeah, my other grandfather was named Wolf. They were all immigrants, even my mother.
Okay.
My father was the only one born here, but even his parents had recently immigrated. But so Wolf, my grandparents were very Orthodox Jews, but Wolf used to come to our house and smoke cigarettes and watch TV because my parents had rejected religion.
Okay.
That's the main thing I remember about Wolf. He died when I was about 12. But the grandmothers, they my mother's mother, Hannah, she died when I was 19, and she was very, very loving. And I have very fond memories of her. She came to this country and didn't speak a word of English. She enrolled in school and she learned to read and write. And then when she finished 6th grade, instead of going on, she said, I'm going to start all over again. So she went back to 1st grade. This is, for immigrants. She wasn't with little
Yeah.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she used to always carry around a book. I think it was called Words of Power. She was always trying to learn new words, but then sometimes she wouldn't use them properly. Like she would say, "I'm so gregarious to meet you," something like that. So
Yeah.
we enjoyed her kind of malaprops. And the other grandmother was still very, very religious, and she used to go to the neighborhood synagogue when in a snowstorm when it was only she and the rabbi that were there. And when I was at her house, we they used to babysit me, she and my aunt. We had to say a prayer before everything we did. And it was
Okay.
just like I didn't understand it at all, but we had to say a prayer. She died when I was 31, so I knew her quite well. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I could go on, but I think we'll stop with the grandparents.
Okay. Well, what I was going to ask
Yeah.
was, did they have any creative elements that were in their lives as well?
No, I mean, I think when you look at immigrants like that, it's their survival. That's all they care about, except for my Aunt Molly.
Okay.
I had two aunts, Molly and Clara, and one uncle, Uncle Herman.
All right.
And I'm actually working on a painting now of their immigration, a very
Nice.
large painting. And Aunt Molly turned out to be very schizophrenic. Toward the end of her life, she was making speeches on subways and feeding her cockroaches so they wouldn't go hungry, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And she was a violinist and photographer. She made her living doing. She opened up a photography studio, and I still have a lot of her photographs of the family. But she used to say the thing I remember. Her line that I remember is, um, she would try to get us to have personality when she took a photograph. And I just remember in her accent, her Polish accent, it sounded like poisonality. So,
Oh, wow.
and when I look at photographs now, I think, that's some poisonality there.
Right.
But she was very, very dear. But it's very sad how
Yeah,
schizophrenic she was, without any treatment, of course, in those days.
sure,
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, I can imagine.
yeah.
Um, that's difficult to be the observer from that perspective in a family
Yes,
when
yeah.
that takes place.
Now, my Aunt Clara, also an immigrant, she was a seamstress and she got a job in the fur industry. And when she used to watch television, she would see, I think it was Elizabeth Taylor with her mink coat.
Yeah.
And my Aunt Clara would say, I sewed the lining on that coat.
Oh, wow.
That was her claim to fame.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that's life of an immigrant, what you get.
Well, there's an element there that is you have to be creative to learn to survive in a new
Yes.
surrounding.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was fascinating though that she went into the fashion industry as a seamstress. I've always been enthralled with fashion over the
hmm
years, um, and I know, early on in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, New York City was a fashion hub. You're having
Oh, yes. Yeah.
fabrics and different things
Yeah.
come in from other countries. So I imagine that was a very opportune time for her to be a seamstress. And
Yeah, and actually, the furrier industry, my grandfather Moisha, who I talked about, who
yeah,
fixed his own heating pad, he came to the country 6 years. That was the rule then. You came to the country 6 years before your family, and then the family came. And he was an iron worker, and he had a terrible accident, and so he couldn't work anymore. And
oh wow,
he became an inventor for the furrier trade. He had a
really?
tiny little workshop and he invented a knife. His last name was Stock, Moishe Stock. And the little knife was selling very well, but somebody stole his idea. And when he died, my grandmother sued them because they stole the idea of the stock knife. And she
Okay,
got a tiny little settlement, but she felt good that so he was also part of the furrier trade. I don't
wow,
know exactly how the stock knife worked, but I do
right,
have an inventor in my ancestors.
for sure. That's amazing as well.
hmm
And yeah, being able to get that little settlement, that
mm
I would imagine validated his uh, gift and craftsmanship that was taken away, which I understand that's part of being creative as well.
Mm-hmm.
Many times, somebody who has a fantastic idea gets snatched up by somebody else and it's turned into
hmm
multi-million dollar businesses. So
Yeah.
I definitely understand that. With being in elementary school, did you find yourself um, being creative at all during that period of time, like wanting to draw or paint or any of those things?
Actually, not. I think that's where my story is a little different from a lot of people who
Okay.
felt that way from the start. I didn't really have a lot of strong interests. What I remember is I was interested in nature in the sense that we lived across from a park, and I used to bring home insects and and
Nice.
and dirt, stuff like that. I
Okay.
was a little bit more interested, I would say, in the sciences maybe, but I think girls in the 1950s when I grew up, you got a lot of praise for just being sweet and pretty, which I was. So that was what I kind of landed on because I wasn't stupid. I did pretty well in school, but
Yeah.
I didn't really have any strong interests. And
Okay.
that's how I got into art. Was my parents were thought that children should have the arts in their life, so they would send me for. I write about this in the book. They sent me for modern dance lessons and then piano lessons. My sister was fantastic at piano. My mother had a beautiful voice, and she sang with some classmates who are now famous opera singers. But I even flunked the first music test they gave me, and she demanded that I take another one, and she coached me on how to do
Okay.
it, and I passed. But so finally they said, okay, she's not good at this, and they sent me for art lessons with their friend Ruth Brody, who is a very accomplished watercolorist.
Okay.
And that's how I got started. I think I was 11 or 12. It was just a very small class in her basement. And I was just doing whatever she said. And for some reason, I got really totally into it. And she was very, very respectful of us. It was like she treated us as an adult and she pointed out how I could improve. And so I was a late bloomer in that sense. I didn't have one of the chapters in my book is called Not a Prodigy because everyone says, "Oh, I was so into it right from the start," but I wasn't into it and I wasn't good at it either. So
Right.
it's a little different story of art recovery, artist recovery.
Sure. Sure.
Hmm.
The the encouragement did you that you got for her from her rather,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, did that did that give you enough courage to continue taking those classes and continue on in that way?
Yes, actually it did because I applied to the High School of Music and Art. I was at the age where if you wanted to go to this, it was a public school for the arts, you had
Okay.
to prepare a portfolio. So I did prepare a portfolio and and I got into the school and then once I was in the High School of Music and Art, we had a lot of art. We
Okay.
did a lot of art. But one of the stories in my book is that I think I was a junior or a senior. My one of my paintings won an honorable mention in the they had a semi-annual art show twice a year. And I remember my father, he was kind of bewildered, like, why would this ugly painting win an award? He didn't come out and say that, but that
Yeah.
was sort of the vibe. And
Okay.
I didn't really like the painting either, so I never questioned him, like, why don't you support me? Because I just figured he was right. It was an aberration. But looking back on it, I have the painting in the book, and people have said, actually, I really like that painting. It looks like it was painted by an older person, and so I feel kind of sad, like it was a missed opportunity for some
Sure.
recognition.
Yeah, I can understand that. How? What was your mother's reaction
I,
to that?
I, I don't remember. I don't have
Okay.
any. Yeah, good question though. You're very
But
probing, Rich.
yeah, well, that's the beauty of the interview. Um,
Mm.
it's very interesting that your father's reaction was the one that stuck, uh,
Hmm.
versus maybe what your mother experienced at that time in regards to that. Um, was the school that you were going to for arts and music, was that kind of a separate school than traditional high school?
Well, in New York City, they still have this.
Okay.
You can go to your neighborhood high school, or you can apply to specialized school. Like they have a science school,
Okay.
that sort of thing. So that's how it works. And they take a certain number of kids into these specialized schools. Of course, you still have the science and math. You have all of the basic classes
Okay.
as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hmm.
So at that point, you're starting to realize that I like doing this. This is giving some kind of joy to my heart and my spirit. At that point, how is that progressing, going into junior and senior year for you? Is it something that you're starting to excel at, or is it something where you're just kind of on an even keel pace, getting passing grades?
Yeah, I did not stand out except for that one award that I won. I don't think I stood out. When I look back at the art that I made there, it was mediocre, I would say. But
Okay.
I just wanted to keep doing it. I don't think I thought of it as a great passion, but I just liked doing it and I kept doing it through high
Yeah.
school.
Okay. And how how was the kinship with friends uh, within that setting for you? Was there a lot of individuals that you gravitated towards that may have had what you seem to feel was better art than what you were creating?
Not really. I was very shy because in New York City, I don't know if they still have this, but there's a program where you can skip 1 year of junior high school. You can complete it even in 3 years or 2 years. And many of us did the 2 year
Okay.
program because middle school has a kind of bad reputation. Like people don't
Yeah.
like. So I did the 2 year. But then when I got to high school, I was a year younger than most of the other kids, and I felt very insecure. They were very sophisticated, and
Uh,
they dressed really well. The school was in Manhattan.
okay.
It was a public school, but it was a very good school. And so some of the kids that had come from private school, they were more wealthy, and their parents were filmmakers and gynecologists, and I was kind of like lower middle class from the Bronx. So I felt very intimidated, and I made one friend and I just clung to her, and we did everything together. And I was okay with that. I didn't have any boyfriends till I was almost finished with high school. And as far as the other kids, I don't remember them being really great at art or anything. For some reason, it didn't really
Okay.
stand out.
Got you. Did you find yourself excelling more in that time frame in science and stuff that may have been similar to what your dad was doing?
Not in high school. I actually was more interested in elementary school, and my father would bring home chemicals from his lab, and just he was always very inquiring. Like when we would take a nap, he would say, "Okay, I'm going to put ice under your bed, and when it becomes water, you can wake up." It seemed very magical. He would
Right.
he would do a lot of that kind of experiments,
Okay.
and I did get quite interested in science. He also, one of the other wonderful things he did in the 50s, girls didn't have any role models for the sciences, but he knew about Madame Curie, who was a
Okay.
famous physicist, and he
Yes.
told me about her. And so when I look back on it, I think that was very progressive of him to give me that role model. But
Yeah.
I don't remember. I was not very good at math or I was not bad at anything. I was just, I would say, highly mediocre.
Got you. Got you. Or average, just average.
Average. Okay, average.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to turn that phrasing around for you.
Okay.
Mediocre seems like a pretty low bar. I think you have a little bit of a higher bar there.
Okay.
Um,
Mm.
when you're getting towards the end of your high school era, uh, and you've got this friend that you're really close to, and you're doing a lot of things together, are the two of you thinking about going on to college or anything after high school at that point in time?
Not through her, but the real turning point for me was that when I was 16, I had finished my junior year. My father was a high school teacher, and he used to go in the summer for these enrichment programs
Okay.
for high school science teachers. So he had the opportunity to go to California from New York, and he said, "You have to get a summer job because if you don't, you're going to have to come with us." And for a high school kid, you don't want to spend the summer with your parents. So, of course, I was also kind of lazy and I didn't get the job. I didn't get a job. So we went to California in the summer. But he had this presence of mind to find out that he could enroll me in the University of California at Berkeley, even though I hadn't finished high school, just for the summer program. It was, I don't think it was even a program for high school students. It was just summer school. And I enrolled in two classes there. And I did go to Berkeley. I did. He also let me live in a dorm, so I didn't live with them.
Okay.
And coming from New York in the 50s, it was very, actually by then it was the 60s. It was very gray, a lot of brick buildings. And to come to Berkeley, California was just so beautiful. All the plants and everybody seemed friendly. And I just fell in love with it. This is it. And I loved my classes. I don't even remember what they were. I think there was sculpture and something else, but I loved the classes. And it was just assumed that I was going to go to college in the group that I was in. So
Okay.
I said to them, I'm coming back here for college or I'm not going to college at all. Now, I don't know if they would have accepted that, but somehow they agreed to it. And I applied to the University of California at Berkeley and I got in. Now, nowadays, it's very hard to get in, very extremely hard.
Yeah.
In those days, I don't know if it was easier, but also I was an out of state student and you had to pay tuition much higher than the in state. So they may have had the entry requirements a little lower.
Right. Get some
I mean,
extra money that
I
way.
remember, I remember I was not a straight A student. I was a pretty good student,
Uh,
but for some reason I was only 17 when I left home because I had skipped the grade.
okay.
So they let me come to California by myself when I was 17. And it was 1967. We had no idea about uh, the counterculture, the hippies. None
Right.
of that was happening earlier. I don't think
Yeah.
they would have let me go if they knew that.
Sure. Sure.
But that's when things really started cooking in my life, arriving in Berkeley in the 60s.
Was it, you had already saw basically what the landscape looked like, and you
Yeah.
were intrigued by that as well. Being that introvert and going off to college that far away from home, did that um, play into how you may have interacted once you first got there?
I think so. I opted to live in a co-op, which is like a dorm, but it's less expensive, and you have to do some work, and
Yeah.
that seemed like a cooler thing to do. I remember both of my roommates were from Los Angeles, and their parents were divorced. And in the Bronx in New York, nobody was divorced, even if you had a horrible marriage. It was
Okay.
just not done. So that
Yeah.
was the first thing I noticed. It's like everybody's parents were divorced, and I met a man at the co-op. He was a graduate student, but I think he used to come to the co-op for parties looking for women. And
Okay.
I met him like in the first few weeks. So I immediately had a boyfriend. And then I had my two roommates. So I didn't have like a huge circle of friends, but I had my boyfriend in the book, I call him the ghost. And he was very pale.
Okay.
And so I refer to him as the ghost. And he kind of introduced me to a lot of interesting things that were going on at the time. Uh,
Okay.
for for example, he would on the weekends he would say, "Let's go hear some music in San Francisco," and I
Hmm.
thought, okay, I wasn't that into music particularly, but so we used to go to this place called the Fillmore. I thought it was just
Yes.
like I really didn't think anything of it, and there was Jimi Hendrix
Yep.
mashing his guitar and Janis Joplin and light shows, and I knew this was completely incredible. But I still didn't know it was part of the counterculture. So I went
Right.
into it totally blind. But he introduced me to that and other things I could tell you about, like LSD and all that.
Okay. Got you. With the courses that you enrolled in,
Hmm.
were you specifically wanting to do art courses at that point in time?
Yes, I was already wanting to do art.
Gotcha.
And at that time, they called it the hard edge. It was abstraction, and you
All
were
right.
supposed to put masking tape on your canvas and then paint over it, and then you pull off the masking tape, and you have these very hard edges. That was what was in at that
Yeah.
time, which I did not relate to.
No?
No.
Okay. Okay. how were your instructors at that point? Were they as encouraging as um, the one that you had early on?
No, I was not that intimate. And actually, that first year in college, I have very little memory of even the art classes. It was so much counterculture, and I was already becoming a hippie. I was already wearing long skirts and flowers, and the professors, a lot of the professors were dropping out or just teaching the minimal. The whole scene there was really pretty crazy. And
Yeah.
so the main thing I remember was that I did take LSD, but only once because I had a bad trip.
Okay.
And uh, so I was really getting into the whole hippie culture, and I dropped out of school at the end of that year.
Oh,
I
wow.
I decided school is meaningless. Why am I even here? I just bought into the whole thing. It's like I just want to be. I don't want to do anything.
Right.
I was programmed my whole life. I used to go to elementary school in the summer. We went right to summer camp from elementary. I went to summer camp all the way through high school, and I was just totally scheduled. So I just felt like I just want to be. I don't want to do anything. I don't even want to do art. So
Okay.
I I I had gone home for the summer, and then when I got back, that's when I realized I didn't want to be there. And I called up my parents and I said, I'm dropping out of college. And they've totally freaked out.
Were at that point were they helping you in terms of with tuition, or did you have a job? And
No, they were totally helping me with
okay.
tuition. I got monthly checks. But when I dropped out of school, it all went away
Yeah.
because they were not the coddling type of parents. They were supportive.
Sure.
And I knew they were right to do that. But so I immediately had to get work.
Okay.
And um, oh, but the first thing that happened was that they consulted the family doctor because this was like, she must be on drugs or something terrible.
Oh,
And
wow.
we had this very lovely family doctor, Dr. Gaynor. We
Uh-huh.
all went to him. And he told my parents, this is an emergency. You must fly out to Berkeley and find out what's going on. She's either having on drugs or she's having a psychotic break or something.
Oh,
Because
wow.
in those days, people did not drop out of college. It
Yeah.
just, it wasn't really done. But very soon after that, everybody was dropping out. But
Yeah.
I was one of the first. So
Okay.
my mother flew out and she demanded to see the school psychologist. So I lucked out. This is a story in the book. I lucked out, and the school psychologist turned out to be a former co-worker of Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, the LSD researchers at Harvard. He had
Yeah.
worked with them at Harvard,
Okay.
and he was a PhD psychologist. He was my assigned psychologist.
Yeah.
So he separated us. He asked my mother what was she worried about. Then he asked me, and I said, I've been scheduled my whole life. I just want to experience this. So then he told my mother that I was totally normal and she shouldn't worry about me. So I'm still like extremely grateful to him
For real.
for,
Yeah.
for, for doing that. And then my mother's like really a fun loving person. So after that, we went out to eat. I showed her around and we had a great visit. So that was diffused. And I just went and got a couple of part time jobs
And lived life.
and just used to wander around and just look at the plants and do nothing.
We-
Yeah.
Did you, did you still continue to go to music concerts and festivals and different things at that point too?
I don't remember. I know that I was there at one of the human beings and I heard the
Okay.
Grateful Dead.
Uh-huh.
I was not like heavily into music. I kind of regret it now because I could have seen a lot more, but I did see Janis Joplin a few times and the Jefferson Airplane.
Yeah.
But that might have been more when I had the ghost boyfriend. I did break up with the ghost.
Did you?
Yeah. Over the summer because that was the other thing that was happening was the whole free love. It was very things were very loosey goosey around
Yeah.
sexuality and um, but Yeah, but what happened was after a few months, maybe I got bored. I don't remember being bored, but I started painting again on my outside of school. I
Okay.
just was making little paintings and that's when I thought, if I go back to school, I'll start getting checks from home and I can take art classes and I'll be in a better position than a dropout with two crappy part-time jobs
Right.
making a few little watercolors. So after a year, I went back to school.
Okay. Interesting.
Hmm.
And then you dove into the art.
That's when my very first class, the teacher's name was Boyd Allen. He was part of what they call the Bay Area Figurative School. Uh, and he was just, it was basic art materials. So he had to tell us we had to do oil paint and watercolor. And one day he handed out a piece of paper, one page. He said, "This is egg tempera." And he said, "I have no idea how to use it, but you all have to try it because it's a historical medium and that's the assignment."
Yeah.
So I had no idea what to do, but I got the equipment. I had plywood and pigments. Pigments are dry powdered colors,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
mix them with egg yolk. That's the egg tempera.
Okay.
And then you have to get this white chalk-like powder, and you mix it with glue, with the rabbit skin glue, to make the gesso, which is the coating, the priming. Nowadays, people use acrylic gesso underneath their acrylic or oil paintings, but for egg tempera, you can't use acrylic gesso. The egg tempera doesn't stick to it.
Got you.
You have to use a special priming that's very difficult to make. I don't remember, I did make it, but I don't remember much about that. But I just do remember that I fell in love with this right away. The paint was just, the priming is very, very absorbent. And the
Okay.
paint just slurps in. And then you put on more and more layers. And it has a special feel to it and a special look to it. And it was like love at first sight kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Was the drawing process um, was it conducive to allow you to continue painting? Whereas with oil painting, you can paint and then you've got to wait a while and then you can go back to it. Was egg tempera a little bit more um, relatable to like gouache or watercolor?
I'd say a little bit more like gouache, but with watercolor, yeah, you don't usually do. It's like akin to what they call dry brush watercolor,
Gotcha.
where you have a dry brush and then you can do layer after layer.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's more akin to that, but you can do very watery washes, which I'm experimenting with now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Is
but mhm.
is that picture behind you? Is that using some of those?
Yes, that's a reproduction of one of my egg tempera paintings.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. I'm seeing it's got some lighter hues to it, so I was curious if that was where you were able to express some of that transparent.
Yeah, well, typically people say that egg tempera is a blonde medium. In other words, that the paintings look a lot lighter.
Yeah.
But when you study it more, you can get, and a lot of my other paintings are much darker.
Okay.
You have to work at it, but they're not all light. But that one does kind of look typically like that. Although it's a reproduction, so the real painting. I probably should try to hang the real painting there. I still have it. That's a good idea.
All right. Once you've gone back to school, do
Hmm.
you start to garner some more friends that you become close with, or are you still in the mindset of I'm just focused on doing this and I just want to move forward in my own little world?
Well, part of the 60s counterculture was communal living, and it's kind of, um, excuse me, I mean, students live together anyway because of it's cheaper and roommates. So I did have various roommates and I did have friends. I'm still friends with one person from that era. And at one point, though, this is when I was still dropped out of school. To save money, I bought an old van, 1948 Ford panel truck.
Okay.
And it was on its last legs already, and I didn't know how to drive because I was from New York. So my friends would drive it around when I had to change the parking spot. But
Yeah.
I created a little cute little house in there, and I lived in that for a while until we drove up to Oregon, and it blew a rod, and I had to leave it there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I did have various friends. But I remember one woman when we visited a commune on that trip. She referred to me as a wounded bird. She saw
Mm,
that I was insecure and shy, so I know that I was not still not outgoing. And it took me actually many years before I learned how to make friends.
okay.
I actually I might have even been in my I don't know if I was in my 30s. Yeah, but I read books. I'm one to read books about things.
All right.
And I said, I really, I just don't really know how to make friends. And I read some books about it. And that helped me. And since then, people think of me now as somebody with a lot of friends. But I wasn't always like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Fascinating. As you're going along in college and the culture of the community starting to shift and pivot as you're getting closer to the 70s, is that something that is drawing you towards it, or are you kind of just doing your own thing and moving along with it, or did you have any aversions to that counterculture that was going on at that point in time?
That's a good question, Rich. Well, first of all, in my senior year, or at the beginning, maybe it was at the end of my junior year, I transferred to the University of California at Santa Cruz
Yeah.
because I just felt that Berkeley was just too big for me and I wasn't making friends. I wasn't learning from the professors, and they had a visiting transfer program. So it was there that I first started getting some confidence in my art. I had two professors in particular who recognized something in me.
Okay.
And I think that was the beginning of how I started to realize that this was my life's passion. But after that, I had to go back for my senior year to Berkeley. There was a rule that if you transferred as a visitor transfer, you had to go back. And toward the end of that, I think it was 69 or 70, I could feel the whole counterculture collapsing. And it was a
Okay.
terrible shock to many of us. We thought that the whole world was changing for the better. We thought it was a whole new world where there was going to be peace and love and just the whole hippie ethos.
Yeah.
And we just felt it collapsing. When you look historically, they say the Haight-Ashbury became lots of drugs. And I didn't experience that, but I did experience like it's over. The 60s are over. And at that point, I moved back to New York.
Okay. Okay. And uh,
Hmm.
at that point in time as well, how was that transition in terms of California culture during the early 70s and New York early 70s?
Yeah. What happened was I realized, even though I had gotten some confidence as an artist and realized that this was my life path, I knew I couldn't make money at it. I didn't even try, really.
Okay.
I just said, I just have to do something to make money. And I was interested in working with mentally ill people. And I went to a psychiatric institution and offered them to work with their patients with some art materials because I had a theory that if you gave patients professional art supplies, like not the crappy stuff they
Yeah.
usually have,
Yeah.
that they would be more into it and the work would be more interesting. So I did that just once, but I worked in a big mental hospital in Napa. I don't think it exists anymore, but um, and then I did another session at a smaller place. I didn't do art with the patients, but I noticed that there were women that were talking to the patients, and they didn't have any uniforms or name tags. They were just sitting there talking to the patients, and I just thought, that's something I could do. I could do that. since I
Uh-huh.
can't make money from my art, and I asked around, and they said they were registered nurses.
Okay.
And I thought a registered nurse would have a white cap and a uniform, and
Right.
I had a totally different idea of what a nurse was. So I started looking into it, and I found out there are many different kinds of nurses, and I decided to go to nursing school.
All right.
So when I got back to New York, I started looking into it. But I did have my very first art job, my actually only art job. I worked in a textile design company. And my
Nice.
job was they would give me a pattern and then they would say, you need to do this in watercolor in these different colors, match the colors.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm good at matching colors. It was kind of a good training for an
Yeah,
artist.
for
I was
sure.
there not quite a year, and they said, at some point, they said, well, at some point, you're going to get to do the next step, which is to maybe do a little bit of designing, but it looked like it was going to be a long time before I became a fabric designer, and
Yeah.
it was pretty boring. So I decided to go to nursing school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you specialize with the nursing school in working with the mental health industry, or was it just a general course study that you took up?
Yeah, you had to do everything in nursing school. You have to do all of the different specialties, and we were sent to a mental institution.
Okay.
We had to live there for I think 3 weeks. It
Oh
was
wow.
called Montrose. It was in upstate New York. But I don't remember. Those were the years that I really did absolutely no art because nursing school turned out to be what I imagined medical school to be. I thought nursing school would be kind of cute, like we would learn how to put on fancy bandages and
Right.
hand instruments to the doctor. I had
Yeah.
no idea. It was really, really intense. And it was luckily I became very fascinated by it and very involved with the patients and so for those couple of years, it was a accelerated program for college graduates because I
All
already
right.
had a college degree. It was very, very intense. And then after that, I moved to Maine. That's a whole other part. But even when I was in Maine, I started getting some art ideas. But it wasn't until I moved back to California that I got very much back into art.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, what was your parents' thought at that point in time of you finishing art school out in California and then get back to New York and now you've completely shifted into a whole nother field?
Yeah. Well, they were both high school art teachers. High school teachers. My mother ended up going back to school and becoming a business teacher in high school. So
Okay.
when they heard in those days, nursing was associated with changing bedpans, and
Gotcha.
they thought it was, they were pretty upset about it that I would be going into nursing school.
Okay.
They wanted me to go to teaching, but the big thing that they loved about teaching was that you get your summers off. They
Right.
never really said much else about teaching. And I thought, why do I want a career where I just, that's the whole reason. So I I I liked the aspect, the sort of proletariat aspect of emptying bedpans, whatever it was. It was just I liked that.
Yeah.
So and I did a fair amount of grit stuff that was not pleasant to the average person. In the
For sure.
book, I tell the story about my second week in nursing school. Was sitting around the cafeteria. This is a back ward nursing home with the very most disabled people, very poor people, and we're sitting around having lunch and we're discussing diarrhea. And I'm thinking, wow, we're really nurses now that we can eat our lunch and talk about diarrhea.
Holy cow.
So it was very much like that. But they really came around. Like my father, years later, he used to quote, I think it was a Gallup study that said that nurses were the most respected profession for many years running. They were voted as the most respected profession, and he used to tell that to me, like sort of saying I was wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say was that
Uh-huh.
he saw the shift in you with that career choice that he may have not have given you when you were younger, that encouragement
Hmm.
from what you were doing. So
Hmm.
I can imagine that was uh, a little bit of a warm feeling that you
Yes,
had when you
totally.
just yeah.
Totally. Yes.
Um, Once you get to the end period of that schooling to be a nurse, are you starting to look at where you might settle in, whether it's a specialized hospital or a larger hospital, or did you kind of get pushed in a direction like that?
Well, they always tell you should go to the wards first, just to a hospital. And at that point, I was very interested in moving to the country, living in the country. This painting was sort of inspired when this period when I did. I went to a conference that was encouraging health workers to move to very rural areas where there was a shortage of medical workers.
Yeah,
And they showed slides of rural Maine, and it was so beautiful. And I thought, wow, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go to this program and work in rural Maine. And at the conference, I fell in love with another person who was he was a physician assistant, also recently graduated, and we
okay.
ended up moving to Maine together,
Oh wow, okay.
which is still the hippie, um, the
Thought
whole
process.
hippie thing
Yeah,
of just just fall in love and move in together, shack up,
right, yeah.
leftover from that. Um, so we did move to Maine, and I did get a job in a regular hospital. I worked in the ER and then on the floors, and I really did not like either one. I mean, the
Okay.
floors, at that point, they had me going around with a medication cart, and I would like go to someone's room, they'd be crying, and I would like want to talk to them and comfort them. And if when I did that, I would get way behind, and all my medications were late, and I knew it was just the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So I did end up going to back to school to become a nurse practitioner, also in Maine. And then I had some very interesting jobs as a nurse practitioner. And I forgot what your question was, Rich.
It was in regards to whether or not they were putting you in to like a traditional
Oh,
hospital or
yeah.
it was a specialized hospital. But
Yeah.
you, the way you were explaining it was answering it.
Yeah. And the wonderful
Okay.
thing, like, so my first nurse practitioner job was at a college health infirmary. And I wasn't much older than the college kids.
Yeah.
And most of the doctors and nurses were retired. This was like a second job for them.
Okay.
And the kids really didn't relate to them. So I had just a wonderful experience. I was teaching classes in birth control, and I redesigned the whole waiting room so it would be for health education.
Okay.
And all my creativity came out
Yeah.
in that job. So at that point I saw nursing can be a lot of things, and
Right.
I never went back to the hospital
Nice.
to work in a hospital. Yeah.
Nice. The other thing that I'm finding fascinating too is um, when we talked about elementary school and middle school and stuff, it wasn't uh, the the aspects of study wasn't really something that was high up on your consideration, and
Hmm.
you're choosing a field to go into the work that you where you really have to study and know the information that's within those textbooks. Um, and it's very fascinating for me to see that transition of feeling pretty mediocre in elementary, middle school, high school, and yet you go off, do art, get a degree in art, and then you shift into the medical field as a nurse, which is highly intellectual in terms of having to know a lot of information in
Hmm.
order to
Hmm.
do the job. It's very fascinating to me.
Well, for one thing, I was very interested in science in elementary school, maybe because of my father. So I saw that as a
Yeah,
continuation, the nursing. And also, nursing is not medicine. And it's very heart and hands, heart and
touch.
hands.
Yes.
And so there's an art of nursing. It's not quite that, but there was a lot of especially since it was an accelerated program. We had statistics and organic chemistry, and it was sort of left brain. But then we had a wonderful mentor, Miss Plummer. I
Okay.
talk about her in the book, and she was saying that the basis of nursing is love, and you should hug and kiss your patients, which nowadays is not really accepted
Right. Yeah.
for good reason. But
Sure.
she said we should sing. Singing is good for the lungs. Anyway, she really opened us up to
The care
the
element.
care. Yes, very much so. Yeah,
Yeah.
which
Nice.
which I still use to this day. I'm still working as a nurse part time.
Oh, really?
Yes, and
Okay.
I call it the love bomb when the patients are having problems. Sometimes they're very upset about various things,
Yeah.
and they try to involve you. They complain. They all and I just instead of buying into their complaints, I just give them the love bomb, and
Right.
it works.
Yeah. I can imagine. I
Hmm.
can imagine that it's not. Uh, and again, I will speak for the audience from my perspective of dealing with my own mental health and different things like that, being um, in hospitals and stuff. You don't get those types of care uh, and extra love, so to speak, uh,
Hmm.
from those facility workers. It's kind of like they're just going through the motions, trying to get through the day,
Yeah.
make sure you get your medicine, make sure you're going where you need to when it's time to eat, different things like that. And I think that's part of what has been um, a downfall of the medical industry is that
Hmm.
that thought of care has
Hmm.
shifted out, and not many have that anymore. Um, which seems almost completely contrary to the Hippocratic Oath um, that is taken.
Hmm.
But in this day and age, it's how much money can the facility produce versus how many people are we actually taking care of. So I commend you for that. Uh,
Well, they put the squeeze on the health workers, and I see it where I work. We're like case managers, and as I'm spending time with these people, I have other people who are waiting for me to call them. And it's a terrible thing.
yeah,
I feel, and I err on the side of spending the time with them, but then I still feel bad that, there's someone I didn't get to. And so they put that squeeze on healthcare workers where you can't, either it's a difficult thing. But one thing I did in nursing school that's in my book when we first got to this very backwards rehab center, there were two people there, two patients, both in wheelchairs, and one of them had was from her family was from Greece. She was born here, but I just felt bad that she was eating all this bland hospital food.
yeah,
So I decided that we had to get her out of there and take her to a Greek restaurant. So I had a friend that I made in nursing school, and she decided to do it with me. And we got permission to hire these vans, and we took these two very disabled people to a Greek restaurant,
yeah,
and that was quite a coup. They ended up leaving the hospital. They ended up being able to leave the hospital and live independently with caregivers, both of them through the years. So
amazing.
it was an amazing thing. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. How long did you stay in Maine doing
I
that
was
work before you
I,
decided to move?
I was there for 3 years, and actually I had another job as a home health nurse where I would
Okay,
visit elderly Mainers in their home,
yeah,
and it was fascinating. I mean, I could tell you stories about that, but um, so I was there for 3 years, and finally it just got to me the weather. Actually, the winters were beautiful. They were just like crystals, and
right,
of
yeah,
course the autumn is famous for the
yeah,
colors. I loved that. The summers, amazing. We had wild blueberries but people don't realize, especially I was about halfway up in Maine. They call it down east. The Maine
okay,
juts off to the east. I was pretty. about halfway up there. And starting in about March, when the winter snows are over, you have this mud season where it's overcast and cold. And it goes on March, April, May. Finally, in June, it gets a little bit warmer. And you go out, and there are these black flies. They're like tiny mosquitoes, and they attack you.
Oh, wow.
And you just can't go outside. You have to wear totally long sleeves. So not until July can you actually go out. So you have this long mud season, and I was just kind of lonely, and I just decided to leave. So that was 3 years. I
Yeah.
was there for 3 winters.
Okay. And at that point, do you go back to New York or do you think you're going to go west again?
I went west again. I was chasing a guy that, in writing the book, I talked to him about what happened when I got to California, and because he was with another woman, and I said,
Okay.
I know our relationship was ambiguous, but I was very, very heartbroken. And he said, "Oh no, I thought it was very clear we had broken up." So, but I did decide to go back to California. Not really. In my mind, I was saying I wasn't going to chase him. I wanted to just revisit California. And also, I was feeling like I wanted to explore living in a commune. And so, on my way back out west, I visited some very famous and some unfamous communes and got the bug of wanting to live communally.
Right.
Yeah.
And how was that for you in terms of the community and the culture of that environment?
Well, I didn't stay that long in each one. There was one called Twin Oaks, which I really felt very good about, very simpatico. But they had this one custom, it wasn't really a rule, but in the bathrooms, there's like 100 people living there. In the bathrooms, you just opened the door. You were not allowed to lock the door. You just had to open the door, and if someone was there, then you could leave. But
Right.
I thought, what's the point of that? I mean, why can't you just go to the bathroom and lock the door? And for
Right.
some reason, that was like, uh, no, I'm not gonna live here even because of that. But otherwise, it was pretty wonderful. They had
Sure.
a hammock shop, and you had to work 40 hours a week. But included in that were meal preparation, childcare, and gardening. You could do anything, but it had to be 40 hours, and you kept track of it. They kept track of it. But otherwise, it was
Okay.
it was very nice. It was a beautiful place in Virginia. I stayed there a week, and then
All right.
I went on to another place called the Farm in Tennessee. It's also a very famous commune. It's still going on today, as is Twin Oaks. You can still go and live in Twin
Okay.
Oaks. You can visit, and if they have an opening, you can live there.
Yeah.
Uh, the farm has a very storied history. Cut me off if I'm going on too long with these stories.
No,
No?
absolutely. You're fine. That's what we want
Okay.
to do.
Okay. Um, there was a guy called Stephen Gaskin, and he used to give Monday night classes in San Francisco. It's kind of spiritual, counterculture, new agey.
Yeah.
I never went to those when I lived in Berkeley in those days. But at some point, he said, "Okay, now we're all going to go in a caravan, and we're going to go find some place to live other than California." So they had a caravan of 80 vehicles, and I have a picture of it in the book. And they landed on a big piece of land in Tennessee, where they still are to this day. And that was I'm not sure when exactly they moved there, early 70s. So they've been there ever since. But Stephen Gaskin, he died. But at a certain point, they were taking in so many people and medically disabled, psychiatrically disabled. They took any pregnant woman who didn't want an abortion. They were not anti-abortion, but they just wanted people to have options. And so a lot of people came, gave birth, and left the babies there. They were adopted into the community. Stephen Gaskin's
Hmm.
wife, Ina May Gaskin, wrote a book called Spiritual Midwifery, and she set up
Okay.
the first birthing center outside of a hospital was there. Very revolutionary. And so they had all kinds of soy factories to make tofu, very creative, but they had too many people. They couldn't support them. So in the
Okay.
80s, I think it was in the 80s, they changed. This was after I was there. They changed the rules that you had to be able to support yourself. So a lot of people left, but about 200 stayed, and they're still there. I think the population went up to 1,000 or something during that period. But I was there
Oh wow.
before that. They had a free store, and I remember somebody was shouting, the free store has toilet paper. And so we went down to the free store, and the shelves were pretty much empty, except for the toilet paper and a few other things.
Oh wow.
And we got the toilet paper, and it just showed me that where they were at that time, it was difficult. They were having financial
Yeah.
difficulties. So I wasn't inspired to live there, but it was very interesting to spend a few days there.
Sure. And once you get back out to
Yeah,
California,
yeah. Hmm.
do you decide to go to one of the local hospitals that you are already familiar with, or are you going to a different area in California at that point in time?
Well, aside from looking for a commune to live in, I was also looking for a clinic that would be an alternative clinic that would have
Okay.
either free clinic or sliding scale and would have some alternative medicine as well as regular Western medicine. And I didn't find any clinics there on my travels, but I did see one when I did go up to Oregon, and they had a van. On the outside of the van, it said, "We deliver." It was the van that the midwives used to do the home birth. So it was like a delivery truck, but
Okay.
it said, "We deliver," meaning we deliver babies. And
Yeah.
when I got to San Francisco, I wanted to work in a free clinic. So I went to the Haight Ashbury Free Clinic, and I volunteered there. And then after a while, they gave me a job, very low paying job, but I didn't have to go back to a hospital. I take that back. I did some private duty nursing in hospitals, but I had the same experience. It just didn't feel right. But when I got to the free clinic, I
Yeah.
felt that really felt good to me.
Right. Right. And at this point in time, based off of the uh, writing that you did or the work that you did in regards to the AIDS epidemic, is this
Oh
where you
yeah.
first start experiencing that phase in society?
Yes. Well, for one thing, the 60s were over, but in the Haight Ashbury, there were all kinds of young people that were coming to the Haight to try to
Yeah.
experience some of what had been lost. They were hoping to find it. And also the gay culture. When I moved back to California in the 70s,
Mhm.
the late 70s, the gay culture was booming, and
Yeah.
I've made a lot of gay friends, and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful open culture and very creative. And at the Haight Ashbury Free Clinic, I met some people there who are gay. So what happened was we were treating people with sexually transmitted diseases, and some of this treatments were just not working the way they used to work. And
Right.
then I think it was 1981, we started hearing about, they called it the gay cancer. We started hearing about this, and then very soon it was identified as AIDS, uh, HIV virus, and it was awful. We just saw people, beautiful young men, dying and walking around with gray hair and canes and wheelchairs, and they were dead in 6 months at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just terrible. Yeah, it was really.
Yeah. It's definitely horrible. When I was young, um, my early elementary years, we had a friend of the family, really good close friends of the family, and their brother had come down with AIDS,
Mm.
and so they were taking care of him at their house um, for that last phase of his life.
Oh, yeah.
And so early on, I I experienced what that looked like
Mm,
on a first-hand basis. So I understand exactly what you're talking about. What that the visual of that experience is, um, and it's not back then. It was not pleasant at all.
mm-hmm,
It was devastating, and during that time, it was not something that was kind of being prioritized as something that needed to be addressed with full
mm-hmm,
force of uh, medicine and whatnot. So I do understand what that period in time was like, um,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
for sure, for sure. While you're at this clinic, are you seeing that this is for sure what you want to continue sticking with? Is the private clinics and places where you can be more of that caring nurse?
Yes, yes. But I did eventually, I should really look at my resume because I don't have the dates straight. I should have it posted nearby to refer to. But at a certain point, not long after, can't remember what happened at the hate clinic, why I left. It's funny. I have to ask some people about that. But became interested in research,
Okay,
medical research, because all of our treatments, everything we do in medicine is based on research studies. And whenever somebody had a problem or a friend, in those days there was no internet. So you had to go to
right.
a hospital, you had to go to the medical library, and there were these huge volumes called Index Medicus. And you would look up everything and find out, write down the journals you needed.
Yep.
Then you would go to
Yep.
the stacks, and I'd find all these heavy books that had all these old journals and find what you needed. And then you'd go to the Xerox machine. It was really hard, but I knew that research was so important. So I found myself unemployed at one point, and I was interested in research. And I interviewed some nurses. I didn't know that nurses could be researchers. There were these
Okay.
actually twins at UC Medical Center, and I did an informational interview. And they said, "Well, you'll need to get a PhD in nursing." And I thought, "Oh boy, I don't know if I want to go back to school in nursing." At that point, I was interested in art still. And she said,
Yeah.
"But you can go check the bulletin board downstairs. Sometimes the researchers need nurses to assist them,
Okay.
in their research." So I went down there and I saw uh, a physician who needed a nurse to help. So that was my first research job. And I did a lot of creative work with him because his research study was foundering. It was not he couldn't get the research subjects he needed. And because
Gotcha.
I was a newbie, like nowadays, you can't just walk into medical research. You have to, I don't know if there's
Yeah.
a degree in it, but you have to have some training. I had no training, but I could think about why his project was not working. And I came up with some ideas, and then I made a poster. This is where my art came in. It
Okay.
was a study about the neurologic side effects of cocaine. And I made a poster that had like a mylar mirror, and I put some rock candy for the cocaine and a dollar
Yeah.
bill, and
Okay.
I posted it in the not the lunchroom, but the some kind of a break room, and then I distributed all kinds of pens all over the place. Please call this number when you have a patient who's had a stroke or a seizure from crack. It was crack that was doing it. It wasn't regular
Okay.
cocaine. No.
Gotcha.
Anyway, um, in a few months, I had filled up his study with all of the subjects that he needed. I think it was because I was thinking outside the box.
Yeah, for sure.
So after that study ended, he passed me on to another neurologist, and he was working with AIDS research. And at that point, I had a very dear friend who had died from AIDS. Before that, I was in awe of the nurses and doctors who were working around the virus because it was very scary to us. We didn't really
Sure.
understand how it was transmitted. But after he died, I was offered this job in AIDS research, and I said, "This is it. I have to take this." And I did have to do a lot of blood specimens, so I had to be very careful, which I was. I never had a problem. But I had 20 men enrolled in the study, and by the end of the 2 years, only one was alive. They all
Oh,
died.
wow.
And so that's how I got the idea for the painting series called Ways of Dying, a chronicle of the AIDS epidemic. There were four paintings. One of them was um, one of those patients. Another one was a close friend. Another one was my boss in another AIDS, because I did another AIDS study after that. And what was the fourth one? Um, Peter, Paul. Uh, I think I had four paintings. I have to write that down. But anyway, yeah. Oh yeah, was Jack was the person that I worked at the Haight Ashbury Free Clinic. Yeah, Jack,
Okay.
Peter. Yeah. Um, so I had those four paintings, and that turned things around for me a lot, because that's where the art and the medicine really came together. And I
Okay.
started to realize that I wasn't just doing nursing to make a living, but it was
Yes,
actually supplying me with a lot of subject matter. And
for sure.
so it made everything come together.
And at that point too, with that, those those pieces that you're doing being so personal, um, based on the experience as well, are are you starting to realize that you want to venture more into art at that point so that you can start expressing some of what you're experiencing in these environments externally?
Yes, by that time I had gotten back into art. And the way that happened was when I was working at the Haight Ashbury Free Clinic, I had an apartment and I was taking a class at the local city college, community college, just I think life drawing class. And through my work at the Haight Ashbury Clinic, I met somebody. First, I met a woman who was volunteering there. She introduced me to a group of people who lived in a commune, and I fell in love with one of them. It was kind of a love at first sight thing,
Okay.
and he was an artist, and so
Okay.
he really encouraged me to do the art, and that's when I got back into the egg tempera. And he ended up leaving the group, and we lived together, and we took an 8 month trip to the great museums of Europe.
Oh
Um,
wow.
it was very eye opening. It's all in the book.
Okay.
The book is called Art and Love because it weaves together my art experiences with relationships, with love relationships, and also it ties into that I love art, and the comp, yeah. So yeah, that's when I started getting into it much more seriously. Was when I met him and we went on the trip, and also
And
we were doing art before that. We were doing a lot of art together.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I always find it fascinating when there's a couple that are both creative.
Hmm.
It's a different type of relationship, I think, when that takes place.
Yes, and I have not done that since. After that relationship collapsed in the most dramatic way you can imagine. Since then, I mean, my current
Oh
boy,
wow.
boyfriend, who I've been with 9 years, he's a computer programmer. So
Okay.
yeah, I think there's only room
Got it.
for one artist. I might be wrong about that, but it was very
A lot of
wonderful.
times, yeah, a lot
Well,
of
yeah,
times that is the case.
it was
Definitely.
very wonderful and intense, and I'm not putting it down, but
Sure. No, exactly. So at this point in your career of getting back into the art and doing these very personal pieces, are you thinking that you want to spend a bit more time uh, in focusing on that, or are you still kind of balancing between the two worlds with the nursing as well?
Yeah, I think it began a period where I was frustrated because I had to work, even though I pretty much usually work part time, it still felt like a real struggle between having the time to paint and the time to make a living as a nurse. But at that point, when I got back from the trip, I moved into that same communal house that this boyfriend had originally lived in, which was a little weird at the time when he lived there. I felt it was kind of like a cult, a little bit. They had one guy that was like much older, and he was kind of inspiring the other people. But I didn't think much of it. But when we got back from the trip, he moved back into that commune, and he wanted me to live there with him. So that began a whole situation where I felt I couldn't really do my art there because there were so many communal projects. They never told you
Okay.
that you couldn't do your art, but there just wasn't any time for it. And I was still working as a nurse, but I didn't really have to because the commune would support you. But I felt that I wanted to keep working. So I was still working a couple of days a week as a nurse. And, and then um, I couldn't really, I tried to do my art there, but it just didn't work out. So then I left. This is a whole period in which I was associated with this commune, and I was still very much in love with this man. Uh, but I ended up leaving after a year, and then I went back in. It was kind of a crazy period, and I did very little art. I made maybe a couple of paintings, but I was very frustrated by that. And then I had another crisis where I became pregnant and I got kicked out of the group. It's a long story, but and at that point I realized I had a friend who was doing research. She was a psychologist and she was doing research about cults. And she said, "Laura, this is a cult." And I'm like, "You're crazy. This is not a cult." But she kind of planted the seed to make me realize. And so I actually became pregnant and homeless and abandoned by the father of the baby at this
Oh wow.
period. It was like a real low point. Although I don't like to think of it as a low point because I really wanted to be a mother.
Yeah.
And so that was a struggle. I lived in different places and I finally found a basement. And oh yeah, and at that point, excuse me, another person who was in that commune, he left to protest that I had been kicked out of the group. This wonderful man from Spain, Felipe, and he took care of me while I was pregnant.
Oh wow.
And he was there when my son was born. I
Okay.
actually gave my son Felipe for his middle name.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's a mixed up story of something terrible but something wonderful, and it has a very happy ending because I have a wonderful son now,
Yeah.
and but it was a very tough period.
I can imagine. I can
Yeah.
imagine. Especially being alone. Um, knowing that you're not going to have the support of the father there as well, and that you're going to have to take on that whole role of both parenting components. But very, very wonderful that you were able to come across somebody who is interested in being kind.
Yes, yes. But then I ended up leaving him. I had a very crazy love life. That's why the book's called Art and Love.
Okay, gotcha.
So, um, part of my pattern was when somebody was very loving toward me, I would leave them. And if they were not, I would tend to go toward them. It's a typical, I don't know if it's mostly female, but we have a tendency toward that. So, but I found a a co-op. It was like a commune that was oriented toward children and parents,
Okay.
and they invited me to live there. And that was a real turning point in many ways because, for one thing, they supported me. They helped me with my son, and it was very, very inexpensive to live there. And there was a man there named George, and he was an artist. And he understood that I was an artist, and he cleared a space in the basement for me to paint. And while my son was in playgroup, I would make paintings, and I got really into egg tempera again, and
Okay.
that was a real turning point.
Right. Right.
And I didn't have to work then because there was a program for single mothers called AFDC. It's like a welfare program for
Gotcha.
single mothers. And they gave you like, I still remember it was $350 a month. And this co-op cost 350 or $300 a month for everything, rent, food,
Right.
utilities. You know, we were just sharing everything.
Yeah.
So I was able to paint and also care for him. That was a real turning point.
Nice. Very good. Very good. At any point after that, did you decide, okay, I'm going to shift from the communal living and go back into nursing and focus more on that? Or are you doing it simultaneously?
Well, what happened was another boyfriend
Okay.
uh, who moved into this commune, which I lived in for 3 years, and he didn't get along with the people. It was not a good thing. He was there for my last year there, and we decided to move out together, and we
Okay.
got our own apartment, like a nuclear family kind of. Um, so at that point, I was still trying to learn egg tempera, but I still felt like I didn't know what I was doing. There were no teachers. There was only one book that I was learning from, but it was complicated. And I saw an advertisement for Renaissance painting techniques. And egg
Okay.
tempera is not really a Renaissance; it's more pre-Renaissance. But I figured I'll talk to the professor and see. So I arranged to have an interview with him, and I brought some of my paintings and I said, you know, this is where I'm at, and I've been studying egg tempera on my own, but I really need to learn more. He said, you know, actually, we don't really teach egg tempera in this class, and actually, you actually know egg tempera. You're pretty good at it. What you don't know is you don't know how basic drawing. Your basic drawing skills are not good.
Oh,
You need
wow.
you need to go see the master, whose name was David Hardy. He said,
Okay.
you need to go see him. And then he said, by the way, could you please come and teach egg tempera to my class in Renaissance painting techniques? So that was a real turnaround because I thought I could draw. I mean, I studied drawing,
Yeah.
but I was very dutiful and kind of desperate. So I went to see David Hardy, and he interviews you in his home. He's this darling older gentleman.
Okay.
And of course, you know, he's looking for customers for his school. So he said, "Oh
Yeah.
yes, I think we can help you." You know.
For sure.
So I went. I think it was 2 or 3 nights a week for like 4 years. And the first 2 years, you only are allowed to draw with charcoal. He doesn't even let you paint. And he teaches oil painting,
Okay.
not tempera. But he was very loving, and his philosophy was that passion is a good substitute for talent. I mean,
Yeah.
he didn't tell me I didn't have any talent, but I don't think he would do that. But
Yeah.
I still felt that way. But I developed such a huge passion for painting and art, and I did learn a tremendous amount about drawing and color from him. And my story that I tell in the book was that when I was in his home a couple of times, I fell in love with one of his paintings. It was just, he teaches, oh, I forgot to say, he teaches classical realism. It's a
Okay.
technique, and it's not photorealism. You don't use photos at all. He teaches you how to use your eye as a camera.
Yes.
And everyone had to wear a hat like what you're wearing to
Uh-huh.
dilate your pupil.
Yeah.
And it's this whole technique that, and the paintings come out looking more real than real. It's just amazing and very,
Yes.
very beautiful. So I fell in love with this one painting in his house, and I got the idea I wanted to buy it. Of course, I didn't have any money. So um, he said he noticed, he knew that I loved egg tempera. Is that my microphone making a noise? Or
No, I've got a storm that's going on
oh, you
here.
have a storm. How
Yeah.
exciting. I love it. I love it. Where are you?
In Metro Detroit.
Oh, in Detroit. Oh, fabulous. Big
Yeah.
art scene there. Um,
Yes.
anyway, so he was an oil painter and he painted on regular canvas with a regular priming, but he loved the traditional gesso that egg tempera artists use. And he said, well, if you make panels for me, I'll do a trade. If you make a certain number of panels, then you can buy the painting. I did pay him some cash too. It took how many years? I think it took 3 years to pay it off. It was on layaway. I didn't get the painting
Oh, wow.
until, but I made him panels, and then I trained another student how to make the panels for him. And then at the end, I made a party, and I invited all my friends and David and his wife Sally, and I put a cloth over the painting. And then when everybody was there, I pulled off the cloth to unveil the painting, and and then it was mine. I had it in my house. I still have it right in a place where I see it from my bed. I still really love it. And he
Nice.
was he was very touched that I made him this party for his painting.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. What's interesting is that you're going to see if you can get some help in terms of furthering your career with egg tempera and your skill set, and you get feedback that your drawing skills are not great. But in the same breath, he asked you to come in and teach, which I always find those things very fascinating within the art community, that someone is willing to um, kind of give you a side-handed critique, but yet, and then turn around and say, "You're fantastic enough. We'd like you to teach."
Yeah, it was quite a turning point.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me. With finding this opportunity to be able to teach as well, how long did that last for you in doing so?
Well, at that point, I only taught one class for his in his school. Later on, I did teach egg tempera, but as another way to possibly make money instead of nursing. But I didn't really like teaching so much. I like what I'm doing now, which is giving talks, lectures about the history of egg tempera and that kind of thing. But the actual teaching, part of it was there's a lot of supplies involved, and I had to bring them here, and um, so it didn't turn out to be something that I wanted to do. Like my parents always wanted me to teach, but I don't think teaching was ever in the cards for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting though. Again, you have the you have this internal voice that's telling you that's not for you, but just right before you said that, you said you're talking about egg tempera and doing these speaking
Yeah.
engagements.
Yeah.
So in a sense,
Yes.
you are teaching.
Oh yeah. I still love showing people when I have my book launch in September. I'm going to
Yes.
have a demonstration and also hands-on where people can try it themselves.
Oh, excellent,
If you want to
excellent.
come to San Francisco, you can come to
Okay,
the Well, I'll also have a Zoom party. I'll invite
gotcha.
you. Yeah.
Excellent. That'll be great. And we're also going to have the link to your book in the show notes and description
Oh,
and
okay.
everything as
Great.
well. So,
Thanks.
absolutely. Um, when you start to see that this is going to move you forward with your skill set, do you dive into it even more so? Or is it still that walking the line between nursing and doing the art?
Yeah, it's still. Oh, you had asked me earlier how I got back into nursing. When I was on this welfare money, uh, eventually it was like I would like a little bit more money,
Right.
and luckily nursing was starting to pay very well at that point. And I had
Hmm.
my son. I wanted to be able to do things for him,
Yeah.
so I just decided that I was going to go off of the program and go back into nursing.
Okay.
So that's how I got back into nursing, and I had to support myself after that, up until now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And was that road for you? Was it something that felt comfortable for you, or were there struggles, ups and downs, different things like that were coming into play, raising a child and nursing as well?
Yeah, it was rough. It was hard. At that point I was doing research for 10 years, and I just tried to balance it. I think I was working part-time most of that time, but 3 days a week, and then I had my son. So I got pretty good at just painting when I could.
Yeah.
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 So it
Okay.
was slow, but yeah. And then my son became an artist. I think he was born an artist. So we used to
Nice.
we used to paint together, and we still do sometimes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. How old is he at this point?
Well, he just turned 40. The
Okay.
big 40. So it's hard to
Okay.
believe.
Did he choose an art career with what he's doing?
You know, we used to draw together. I think he had a lot of art genes for one thing, because his biological father
Yeah.
was a very good artist, and his grandmother and me. So I started him off very early with these giant crayons when he was not even a year old. I would put him on
Yes.
this big piece of paper, and he would go like that.
Yeah.
And then I would just hand him a pencil and paper. Sometimes I would start drawing a horse and say, "Okay, you finish it," that kind of thing. But when he was about 10, you know how people, obnoxious adults, say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Right. Yeah.
He would just say, "I am an artist."
Nice.
He was one of those people that knew, unlike me, and he was oozing talent. He would do things when he was a little older that I had to learn in art school, like the concept of foreshadowing. When you draw
Oh,
somebody's hand, you'd have
yeah.
to know that it's bigger. He would
Yeah.
do that naturally, and to this day, I mean, he's a very well known and very beloved artist. He's doing a lot of murals now, and so he did go to college for art. He had some training, but he's just one of these people that have a lot of native talent, and
Yeah.
also
Gifted.
he has an amazing imagination.
That's
This is one of
fantastic.
his T-shirts that he makes
Okay.
his art. He does very linear work.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
At what point do you start thinking, I'm going to write books about what I'm doing?
That's an interesting question, because I always, when you're an artist, when you try to get a little bit more professional, you have to write what's called an artist statement. And it's just nasty,
Yeah.
because you want to paint. You don't want to be trying to explain in words, but you kind
Right.
of have to do it. So I developed this thing that, why don't they ask writers to paint, to do,
Right.
they never ask writers or any other kind of an artist
Yeah.
to make a statement in a medium that's not their own. So I
Right.
was kind of very against writing, but of course I had to do a little bit of it. And, but then I saw that a couple of things. When I used to go to a museum, they have a lot of stuff writing on the wall. You can learn about the artist. And I
Right.
thought, I have to admit that I do like to read about it.
Okay.
And at that point, some of my paintings were very narrative, like the AIDS paintings. There was a story behind
Yes.
it, and you could kind of see the story from looking at it, but not really the whole story. So I decided at one of my exhibits to write out the stories of those particular paintings, and people loved it. They were so moved by seeing the story and the writing. So I think that's how it started. Although I later found an autobiography that I had started before that, a few years before that, just telling some of the stories that I told you.
Uh-huh.
And so I think I had some basic writing, but at that point I had these stories and I had the paintings, and some of my paintings have been kind of controversial, taboo subjects, the death and dying, but also I have things about menstruation and when I was nursing my son, lactation, and
Okay.
then some about sexuality and sensuality.
Okay.
And I felt like I had to do these paintings. It was is what I wanted to do. I was not
Yeah.
really interested in doing just straight landscapes. I love that kind of work or still life, but I had these urgent messages that I wanted to paint about.
Yeah.
But I still felt shy about it. I don't want to offend anybody. And so that part of the book was like, well, I'll just put them in the pages of a book. I don't have to hang them uh, somewhere where people are going to be upset about it. They can look at it in the book. So that was part of the idea. And so I just started writing and writing more stories and that kind of thing. So that was how it started.
Okay. It's fascinating too because I'm assuming, based on what you're saying in the conversation, that a lot of the research that you're doing, you're having to do a lot of notes and stuff like that as well. Is that correct?
Well, I got into the book also has a section about the history of egg tempera, and that's a whole other aspect that happened when I was first traveling in Europe,
Yeah.
how I got interested in the history, which I was going to write a whole other book about the history of egg tempera, but I decided to condense it into an essay at the end of the Art and Love book. But so no, I don't have a lot of well notes. I have a lot of just different writing here and there. And at some point, I thought, well, this is sort of coming into a book, but I need to edit it. I need to do something with it, but I don't feel like I need to hire an editor. I'll just find a book. So I found a book called 10 Steps to Self-Editing or something like that. It was
Okay.
like 2.99 on Amazon. So I bought the book and I followed all the steps. And then I still felt I didn't really know what I was doing with this book. I thought, well, I'll just contact the author of the book. She was this woman living in England. And I said, maybe you could look at my manuscript and see, do I have anything here? Or should I just keep it in a drawer or just give it to family and friends? So she read it and she said, this is interesting. Her husband is an artist and she's always wanted to make a book for him. She was
Nice.
kind of really semi-retired from editing. She really didn't really want more editing work, but it intrigued her because it was something she wanted to do for her husband. But she said, I don't know you. From what you've written here, it's not coming through who you are at all. There's no passion. There's no passion here. I don't know you. You need to write a lot more about what you're passionate about and all that. And I was kind of like taken aback. I didn't know.
Sure.
But I figured, okay, well, no one's going to see it. I'll just write. They call it the vomit draft. Just write anything that comes to your mind, like a journal.
Yeah.
So she said passion. She said, so I started writing about my love relationships and even about sex and eroticism you know, and she seemed like a very straight-laced lady. I was a
Uh,
little bit shy to show it to her, but she read it and she said, this is perfect. This is just what the book needs.
okay. Nice.
It turned out that her children were very upset because she used to write erotic poetry. So she wasn't as straight-laced as I thought.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But
Interesting.
anyway, that was a real turning point. And then I just started working with her for like 2 years,
Okay.
back and forth and sending drafts. And she was like a writing coach because I don't like writing for one thing, and I'm not a good writer. I
Right.
needed a lot of help, but she understood what I needed. And so it took like, since I found those old autobiographies, 12 years. I've been at this for 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this has been a labor of love as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Mm.
That's fantastic. One of the things that you said early on about when you were working in the mental health facilities,
Hmm.
you had brought in some creative aspects into that work environment.
Mm.
When you did that, did you notice any shift in what that did for those patients?
Not really, because I only did it one time at there. The other time I was just looking at, watching the nurses interact. I did consider, though, when I was thinking about becoming a nurse, I did consider becoming an art therapist, and that
Okay.
that would involve that. And I also was looking into medical illustration.
All
Those
right.
were the two competing fields. But I
Yeah.
thought I ended up with nursing because it seemed more versatile,
Sure.
but I ended up not really doing much art with patients, except that
Okay.
one time. Yeah, it's a good question though.
Yeah. The reason I bring that up is because one of the things that I try to encourage artists, if they feel that they're stuck in their
Mm,
careers with what they're doing, if they feel it's not providing them any type of um, energy any longer, it's not fulfilling their soul, that
mm-hmm,
type of thing. Um, I always like to suggest the opportunity that art can have within a healing environment
mm-hmm,
and how profound that can be for those patients.
mm-hmm,
So I always like to say if you're an artist, if you're feeling stuck, um, feeling like what you're doing is not fulfilling your heart and your spirit, maybe think about what you could do if it were to help others in a healing
mm,
environment,
mm, interesting.
and how that might shift somebody else's life, which will in turn
Mm-hmm,
give you a
mm-hmm.
sense and perspective that will bring you some joy.
I love that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I always try to put that out there for creatives who may be listening and thinking, you know, I've been really struggling and I don't know where to go. So it's fascinating that you have, uh, over the course of your career, been a nurse all along, as well as being an artist. So you've got that
Mm-hmm.
intersection of creativity and care that's taken place. And one has complemented the other in different areas across your life
Mm-hmm.
story. So I find that fascinating. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on as well.
Oh,
It's because
interesting.
I already saw that perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to delve into that some more with you today.
Mm.
So I'm very thankful for that, that you were able to come on and have this conversation.
Thank you, Rich.
Absolutely. With this new book coming out and moving forward with your career, do you see yourself doing more books, more storytelling, or is there a specific genre in the creative arts that you want to explore?
Well, the book has taken over because I had no idea what self-publishing involves,
Yeah,
and I never even considered going into traditional publishing. I just didn't think anyone would be interested. So I've had to learn. Actually become a publisher as well as a writer. I've had to
yeah,
learn both fields, and consequently, as of just a few months ago, I stopped painting. Until then, I was doing both, but it's gotten as I approach the launch, it's gotten so much. So I really, really, people keep saying you're going to write another book. I really do not want to ever write another book again. I have ideas for paintings.
yeah,
However, the one idea that came recently was that if I'm lucky enough to make these new paintings that I have ideas for, and some of them are already in the works, I could see having a second edition and
okay,
adding, because all my paintings are in the book,
yeah,
and that would really interest me. And then I could update. I could change a few things, update my life, whatever. But so in that sense, yes, I would do a second edition of the book, but
definitely.
not a new book.
Okay,
only
okay,
only new paintings.
right. There you go. There you go. I think that's a fantastic place for us to be able to end today. Is with
Okay.
that thought process that you're going to just expand further uh,
I,
with what you've done. Um,
wonderful.
one of the things that I always like to remind the audience at the end of one of these conversations is to always listen to your heart, but also be kind to your mind.
Ooh, I love that. I've never heard that before.
Thank you.
It's